Howdy y'all. So, I've been doing some videos trying to share Appalachian folklore, and I tried to make an explanation video, but people don't think I was specific enough. So I want to start out by saying that not everybody, even in the Appalachian Mountains, have been taught these lessons by their elders. I don't know why, I don't know the correlation. Like people that are born and raised there have never heard this stuff. Many people have never experienced this stuff. However, I have had lots of people contact me and say, or leave comments and say, I never believed anything, and then something happened when I was in my 60s. I went all these years, nothing ever happened. So people are very vague about this stuff. They don't like talking about it. Most don't like talking about it, especially the older folks. So when you're taught these things, generally, you're taught them kind of here and there. When you get to a certain age and you got questions, you might get somebody to sit you down and give you a little more detail. But there's still not a ton of detail. They don't really go into detail. And you hear these stories from your elders over time. So I'm going to go into some of the many specific entities, particularly the ones that I have made other videos on. I'm going to try to avoid the ones that I haven't made other videos on yet. And you can share your experiences. If you don't believe it, that's fine. You don't have to. Many of us were taught these things. Many of us have had many weird experiences or encounters. And it doesn't mean we're not Christian. I'm Christian. Anytime anything weird has happened, and I'll share some more of my stories. I got like my scariest paranormal story somewhere in my videos. We just pray and we calmly leave the area, and God has always protected me. So I will go into some of the specific entities. So to start off with, when they say you're in the Appalachian Mountains, and it could just be like you're not actually in the woods, you're just in the region. When you hear this stuff, like if you hear your name called or you hear whistling or anything like that, you don't answer back. They say, no, you didn't. Because if you answer back or you whistle back, it's kind of like they know that you know that they're there, and it's inviting them in. And so then at that point, I guess you kind of become more seriously the prey, and they become more like the predator. And they say to calmly leave, because when you start running, if you think about even normal critters, a lot of them, when you start running from them, it just like activates their predator response and they'll chase you. So we will start with haints. Haints are evil spirits. They do not have a physical body. They generally bother you at nighttime, but I reckon it could be anytime. So old timers, and some people still, they'll put a bowl of rice out on their porch, or they'll put a broom that has a bunch of the like straw pieces, because apparently, and I do not know why, the haints have to stop and count stuff. So if you put a big old grain of rice on your porch outside your house, they're going to stop and count every grain of rice. They will stop and count every little straw in the broom. The other thing people would do for haints is put up newspaper all over their walls, specifically outside of the bedroom walls, because again, I guess it's like a obsessive compulsive thing. I don't understand it. They would have to read the entire paper, like every word on the paper, and part of it was because they wanted to know what was going on, and part of it was just that obsession. And a lot of people would paint their porches and their doorways a color that literally has a name now called haint blue, because that color apparently keeps them from coming into your house. They would also put up blue bottles, like blue glass bottles, that apparently would catch the haints. Now, I don't know what they did. If they caught a haint, I don't know what they did after. I don't know what they did with it. I never learned that part. But if they get in and say you're sleeping and they get to you, people would say in folklore that essentially they would drain you of your energy. And I don't know if that's to the point of death or just, I don't know. So the idea was to keep them distracted long enough via stuff on the porch, the rice, the broomsticks, the newspaper, until you woke up the next morning and then you were good. So if people had any way that they could get into the house, like an open window or a chimney or even a keyhole, people that strongly believed in this would make sure all the windows were shut. They would do things to like block the hole where the chimney was at night when they're not using it. And they would even stuff like paper or whatever into the keyholes to keep them out. So there's your haints for you. The other thing is just plain old demons. And if you're a religious person, you don't have to be, I don't judge anybody, but if you're a religious person, even in the Bible, it talks about spirits, bad spirits, demons, stuff like that. So with this particular one, demons, I guess, are everywhere. But in the mountains, in the region, demons would try to attack you spiritually or physically, but they're still generally spiritual beings. So they would whistle at you, they would call your name, and it's the same thing. Once you acknowledge them, they know that you know, so then they can come and essentially attack you, whether that's just spiritually, whether that's your physical body. And as I said, anytime anything weird's happening, you start praying, you call on the name of the Lord, Jesus will protect you. He has always protected me when I've had weird experiences. There's your demons. Another one that people mention a lot is Bigfoot, aka Sasquatch, aka lots of other names. These are all through the world. The Cherokee talked about Bigfoot and these other entities for hundreds of years. And I want to note that when immigrants started coming over, Native Americans, and in my area, particularly the Cherokee, they taught this stuff to my ancestors. Stuff that had been passed down to them over generations. They shared with us. They had lived in these mountains. They knew. It's one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. And they taught the stuff to us, and our elders passed it down to us, if you were one of the people that your elders passed it down to. So Bigfoot has been known to talk like a human, to whistle, to scream, and they would take children. They would attack people physically. They would, I guess there have been stories passed down that they would actually take someone's life. But I specifically have never heard of any example of that from any of the folklore I've heard from my family. But then there's also people who believe that Bigfoot is a protector of the mountains. He's a protector of the land. They believe that not only can he be in physical form here, that he can go through portals and other dimensions, and that's why he just like randomly disappears. I made an all about Bigfoot video on my channel somewhere. There's Bigfoot. So another one is skinwalkers. Now they are called different things depending on where you are. Even like in the United States, out west, they're called different things. In the east, they're called different things. But just for sake of everyone knowing what I'm talking about, I refer to them as skinwalkers. There's a lot of different theories on them. They are believed to be able to take human form as well as the form of an animal, and are generally just not good. So, as a human, for example, if they're in a human form, they can just come right up and start talking to you. They can be charming, according to some people, and kind of build a relationship, or like a relationship of trust with you, until they're ready to turn on you. As an animal, they are very dangerous physically. They can attack you, and hurt you and potentially take your life. And they can take a form of whatever animal they want. And that's how you go on Skinwalkers. Let's see, notadeer. I've made videos on all these things that I'm talking about, other than perhaps Skinwalkers. I've made videos, whether they're a small little video or a short. So if you want to investigate that further, you can. I'll try to at some point make a playlist of those things. But for now, I'm just trying to get this going and try to explain some of what I'm talking about, so that y'all will understand. And keep in mind, a lot of people just do not talk about this stuff, and they don't talk about it in detail. And a lot of us don't really have all the details because we're just taught not to do these things and whatnot. So actually, okay, notadeer is a kinda looking deer. The difference is it has eyes that are more up front, like a predator, whereas a regular deer has eyes on the side, more like a prey animal or a deer. They say that their knees are kind of bent backwards, so it looks like their legs are bent backwards. They're said to have red eyes. They have really sharp teeth, and they are a true carnivore. So they don't just, eat plants, and then if they have to, due to malnutrition or whatever, how deer will do sometimes, like gnaw on some bones or some skin, which they really can't digest. Notadeer will just straight up kill and eat meat. And they can stand up on their hind legs too and be bigger, make themselves bigger. People have shared comments with me about, like 2 or 3 people have basically said the same story about hitting what they thought was a deer, and they get out, there's no deer to be found. One person called, the cops or the sheriff or something, and they actually looked around the area and found no deer. So you don't want to mess with those either. And witches. This is another one. There are people who are witches or who are pagan, and that is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about witches who basically do bad magic, like cursing people or saying spells to cause bad stuff to happen, cursing children. A lot of time you will find these out in the mountains, and they do their stuff out there. So that's, I think, pretty self-explanatory. It's not people that are just pagan, or it's not all people who identify as witches who do various sorts of not bad spells. They're not out like cursing people and stuff like that. And the Bible talks about that also, for those of you who are Christian. And let's see, have I missed anything? I guess there are creatures in various folklore, like dogman, werewolves, stuff like that. The Cherokee have folklore about a type of cat who is a supernatural being, and in general, these are all bad, and they will attack you and hurt you. Obviously, it's not the same as what you see on TV as far as werewolves and all that stuff. It's different. But I haven't made specific videos on those yet, so I will explain those a little bit further. I also want to point out granny witches, while that is what people call them, they are not the same thing as a witch that goes out and does negative stuff or does spells or anything like that. So, people saying that I'll just go out armed and I'll take care of them that way. Well, if you're out in the woods, and if you're by yourself especially, it's definitely a good idea to have protection, because there's a lot of regular critters out there that will and can hurt you, especially if they have their babies or they're hungry and maybe you have food at your campsite. But that is not what we're talking about here. That kind of stuff will not work against a spirit. I feel like that's a little bit self-explanatory, but then again, it could just be people who have never had these experiences and don't believe that any of this is true, and that's completely fine if that's how you feel. But when you're out in the woods, and usually before something weird happens, which is not 24/7, like stories that people have, like my weird experiences, they have happened randomly and not real close together over decades of my life. So it's not that you just go out and something happens every time you go out. You can be out there for weeks and nothing can happen. You can be out there for months and nothing can happen. But generally, when something weird's going to happen, and this is when you start kind of wondering, everything gets quiet. The woods get quiet. The birds get quiet. The bugs get quiet. Everything gets quiet. The wind stops. Sometimes it gets a little darker, even if it's in the middle of the day. You just get this weird, like, eerie feeling in your stomach, like in your body. Just this weird, like, I don't feel like I belong here, or I feel like something's watching me, or whatnot. And you'll experience, like, the hair standing up on the back of your neck. You just know. It's different. It is not just, oh, I heard a sound, something spooky. It's not like that. It's completely different. And if you know, you know. If you've experienced it, you've experienced it. And that's when you start praying and you just calmly leave the area. You know, just respect whatever is there and that it doesn't want you there, and just relocate. Don't panic. Don't run. All of that stuff lets them know that you're there, according to folklore. Just calmly leave. And then when you get to your car or a safe place, then you can freak out. And you don't talk about it while you're in the middle of it happening, because obviously that is you acknowledging that it's there because you're talking about it. So you just leave, go about your business when you're in a safe spot, when you feel safe, when you're not there anymore. That's when you can talk about it, if you're one of the folks that's so inclined to talk about it. Now, there's a lot more folklore in Appalachia, and there is folklore from all over the world. And all of this folklore, like I said, was taught to us, our ancestors, by the Native Americans, and in my area, particularly Cherokee. I also live in a really unique area. And I've made a like really small video about that, about like vortices in Asheville, or like Asheville Vortex. I'm not sure what I named it. But if you have any more questions, just let me know. I do plan on making videos of some of the others. But it's not superstition. Superstition is different than folklore. And I've made a video about superstitions, and those are all over the world too. A lot of them are common, but they are different. Yeah, so hopefully this helped. I'm trying to explain this stuff, and like I said, it doesn't happen 24/7. You don't have to be afraid to go to Appalachia. You don't have to be afraid to go to the Appalachian Mountains, because like I said, it doesn't happen 24/7. It doesn't happen everywhere. Lots of people never experience anything. Others do. Some will admit and talk about what they have experienced, others won't. Others will just say they've never experienced anything. And it's all over Appalachia. So I've had people from literally like every state say, "Oh, yes, I've had this experience," and they'll share the experience, or they'll just say, "I had an experience." But then other people from the exact same states will say, "I never heard any of that. I never experienced anything. I'm the most powerful thing in the woods. They need to be afraid of me." So a lot of these things, like calling your name, and I guess they just know that supernaturally somehow. Or some of the things, like Bigfoot, will hear other people calling your name and they learn it. And so then they'll call it. They can mimic women or babies crying. Now, there are regular critters that when they scream or make whatever noises they make, they can sound like a woman screaming or they can sound like a baby screaming. But again, those are different. Those are not the same. And generally, when this stuff happens, you have that weird, eerie feeling. So you know that something's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. If you have any more questions, let me know. I will make more videos of some of the other specific entities. Keep in mind that some people have had these experiences, maybe even just one experience their whole life. They either won't talk about it or they do talk about it. Don't ridicule people that have experienced stuff. I mean, obviously you're going to leave whatever comments you want to, but whether it's the entities discussed in folklore or whether it's regular critters, you are not the biggest and baddest predator in the mountains or, in the region where you're at. Your greatest protection is to pray and ask Jesus to protect you. And I do this. I do it in my mind. And like I said, I've always been kept safe. You can be Christian and still have learned and experienced these entities in folklore. So, now, I hope it helps. If you have any more questions, let me know, and I will put out some more videos on the specific entities. When it's a short, you only get 60 seconds, so it's really hard to try to fit stuff in there. I hope y'all have a great day, and please share your experiences in the comments if you are comfortable doing so. Y'all have a great day.